Greenlight Network presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to the Football Time Show. We're here with Achilles ready to continue our NFL preview series. We got two conferences left to go, Achilles. We're getting rid of the North today. Then on Tuesday, we're getting rid of the West. And then games are upon us, and we can get into our pick show. So two preview shows left to go, and then we get into real action and our picks. Are you ready to get into the North side of things?
Yeah, I was really excited about football coming back, at least to some extent. Now I'm ready for it to get started. I'm just ready. I'm really anxious to get it kicked off.
Yeah, well, we'll break off into the North here, and this is very interesting, the AFC and then the NFC side of things. Really, I think the NFC side of things probably can rival the NFC East as maybe the worst division other than one team in there. And then you got the AFC North, and that thing is loaded with three teams who could all three really be contenders. So really sort of difference in team range here in the AFC and the NFC on the North side of things.
Oh, definitely. And I think as we kind of break it down a little bit, we'll start seeing some vast differences in both of them. So,
all right. Well, we're going to start off on the AFC side of things, and we're going to start off with last season's AFC North champions, the Baltimore Ravens. So, Baltimore had a handful of exits in this last year. Mark Ingram left. I don't think that's, but I think defensively and along the line, there's probably a couple things that happened. Judon left to go to the Patriots. That's a pretty big loss. Nyang'u went to go to the Raiders on the edge. And then Orlando Brown and Matt Sakura both left on the offensive line side of things. Technically, Robert Griffin also retired, but I don't know if that's quite the factor we thought it would be, 6-7 years ago when he first broke in.
Was he still on an NFL team last season?
He was the backup to the Baltimore Ravens. I believe he got a game in there or two when Lamar got a little dinged up, but no Robert Griffin this time around. Tyler Huntley will be the backup for him. Utah pride there, baby. Utah pride. Anyway, let's get into the Ravens here. I don't think we could probably really kick this off without, stating the obvious of J.K. Dobbins blowing out his knee in that last preseason game. I think that really, really hurts. If you look in the past, the Ravens have been able to replace running backs fairly easily. I think they've had a different leading rusher, every year the last 5 years. So they found them, and I think they will again. Gus Edwards, Justice Hill can all make up for it. But I really thought J.K. Dobbins was going to be one of those running backs who was going to be in the elite category, especially with his ability to catch. I thought he'd sort of push his way into that, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook area. And I think it really, really hurts the Ravens now that he's out for the season. So what do you make of that one?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's a huge blow to the team and to the fan base. But I think it puts them exactly where they were last season, maybe even a little bit worse. I actually had high hopes for this team coming into the offseason. I thought that they could do enough to kind of fill the void, especially at the running back position last season. I think that's probably what their weakest point was. Now, you probably know a little bit more about this than I do. I don't know how much of the offensive line actually played into that, but we definitely saw a lack of a running game, and it became more noticeable when you had a lot of issues at the wide receiver position. It seemed like their skill positions in general were basically like a roller coaster. They were up and down. They would show up certain weeks and other weeks they wouldn't. But this Dobbins injury, I think, for me at least, I think it's really detrimental to the team. I think it's going to impact them, especially as the season progresses and you start seeing kind of the wheels come off a little bit. I don't know if they will be able to really get past this injury. But, this is the NFL, and it's always the next man up mentality. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I don't know if the line will be worse after those two losses. It probably is a little bit depending on. They brought in Villanueva from Pittsburgh, but he's, as you know, he was a very good offensive lineman, but he's starting to get a little older now. I mean, we'll get into the Steelers and their line issues, so the fact that they were okay with letting him go and they're breaking in pretty much a whole new offensive line probably tells you where they think his level of play is. And then they brought in Zittler from the New York Giants to play that guard position, which, that's probably a really good, decent plug and play there. I think he'll be really, really good on that side of the ball. Now, taking up for Sakura, who's probably one of the best centers in the league, that will definitely hurt them. And then on the left side of things, probably, Ben Powers taken over there from Oklahoma. He doesn't grade out very well, but, offensive linemen's a little hard to grade things until you actually see them on the field. So we'll see how he does things there. The win total for the Ravens is 11. They won 11 games last year. They won 14 the year before. With the extra game, I find it difficult that they would fall too much off that. I probably see a little bit of regression there, but I think it probably factors what you think of the Pittsburgh Steelers as well in this division, what you think of the Cleveland Browns in this division. Those will probably all be 4 tough games. But if you think Baltimore matches up really well with them, I think they could probably hit that 11. But what do you think about that 11 win total mark for the Ravens?
I definitely felt a little more comfortable with that line prior to the injury. Like I said, I think that one of their weakest points last season was their ability to get the skill players going week in and week out. With the injury, I don't know. I think I'm leaning more towards the under, even with the extra game. I just think that last season, even though they won a lot of games, we really got to see what they were lacking. It seemed like a lot of it started falling on the quarterback's shoulders. And yeah, he's a great athlete, and he can really get out there and kind of gain his own yards on the ground. But ultimately, it's a team sport, and if you're not, if you don't have other guys backing you up, it's going to be really hard to maintain that for an entire season, especially when you throw in an extra game.
Yeah. The other thing with this team is we probably got to talk about it. It's on the outside with the wide receivers. The last handful of years, that's really, really been a problem. Now, theoretically, they have upgraded they signed Sammy Watkins in free agency. They drafted the rookie out of Minnesota, Rashad Bateman. Bateman has already been hurt and banged up. I doubt he'll, even sniff much of the field. Marquise Brown is still there. He's good for an explosive play, but do you think that Sammy Watkins is enough to upgrade that with the rookie Rashad Bateman in there so that they have at least some, I'm leaving out Mark Andrews, but I think we don't need to talk. Andrews is the one thing you can trust on the catching side of things on this side. But, Watkins, Brown, Bateman, where are you sitting? Do you think that receiver room has upgraded enough to sort of help with the passing game there?
I know that I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for saying this, but I think the answer is no. And simply put, we know what to expect from Watkins. We've seen him on the field plenty of times. We've seen him suit up for a couple of different teams. And he's not the type of guy who's going to demand, a lot of attention from the defense. Of course, he's still a solid wide receiver. The question is, can he get to that form? And you're also putting him in a whole new system. People sometimes misunderstand the way certain things work. You see a lot of times when a wide receiver will have a really good, couple seasons.
Also, I will say, also a system that removes him from the Chiefs offense and one that moves him to the Ravens offense.
Yeah. Well, again, like I was saying, you see plenty of times when a wide receiver, he looks really good with the team, and then he goes elsewhere and he just doesn't do anything. And a lot of that has to do, it's not that the player lost skill or that he just suddenly forgot how to stop running routes. A lot of it has to do with the system. the system really helps a lot of different players and their particular skill set. So bringing a guy like him in, and like you said, you've got Brown there. I just don't think that there's much change from last season, and that's why I'm leaning a little more towards the under on that win total. I just think it's going to be a lot more of the same of last year.
Yeah. I'm not thrilled with the upgrade of Sammy Watkins. I think both you and I probably are about on the same wavelength, thinking, Sammy's a solid receiver, but a lot of that was helped with the benefit of being on that Chiefs offense. And literally, he was probably the fourth most important offensive skill player half the time when he was taking snaps. So, defenses were not paying a ton of attention to him. He had a solid year with the Rams there, but once again, that was, a lot to do more with the offense. And then at Buffalo, he was always hot and cold. So he's always sort of been a hot and cold receiver to me. He's not someone that answers your pressing need as a number one wide receiver. Really, I'd probably put him in the same category as Marquise Brown. Occasionally there's, plays there, you'll have games there, but consistently game to game, you aren't going to hit it. Now, I do like the Rashad Bateman draft pick, big, strong wide receiver who, can sort of help Lamar get those in between shots. I think that's probably been a little bit of the Ravens' problem is, in between, they can't hit those short ones. It's, boom or bust. It's a deep ball or it's nothing. And I think Bateman can help that. But as I said, Bateman, starts out through camp already banged up and hurt. So there's no telling when we're seeing him. I wanted to switch to the defensive side of things. We mentioned a couple of guys that left their team, but I think it's still a pretty solid defense out there. Smith, Humphreys, Peters on the corners. And, Derek Wolfe, Calais Campbell, Williams, and McAfee, running on that line. So I think defensively, we probably won't see too much of a slip, even with a couple of guys leaving the team. What do you make of the Ravens defense?
Well, just like I said about the skill position on offense, a lot of it has to do with system. We know the Ravens, typically put out a good defensive system out there, a good defensive unit. So I'm not too concerned about defense, especially with the key losses that they had. I think that the system in general is really defensive player friendly. So I'm not too concerned about it. I think they'll be just about on par as they were last season. To me, the biggest concern on this team is definitely the skill positions.
Yeah. All right. One last sort of thing. It's been a narrative in the boring offseason that the NFL teams will figure out Lamar Jackson. Do you think NFL teams will figure out Lamar Jackson and he won't ever be able to do anything again? Or is it just bored TV networks looking for something to talk about?
So I'm a little bit torn with that question because I look at certain players, like Robert Griffin III and other players like that eventually they were figured out. But then again, I also look at guys like Brady, who's been in the league for, it seems like 100 years, and no one seems to have figured him out. So, I think that, defensive coordinators are really smart and they catch on to play styles and, weaknesses and things like that. And I think they'll definitely try and exploit that. But I think that his skill set is pretty solid. Even though we know what we're getting from him, I think he's good enough that, he can make a defense pay, even if they kind of know what he's going to try and do.
Yeah, definitely so. All right. So 11 on the win total for the Baltimore Ravens. Are you going over or under? You're going under the 11. I'm really torn. I think that 11 number probably sets just about perfect.
Yeah, it'll probably be a push, to be honest with you.
I'm going to catch a lot of grief if I say the word push, but I'm going to say the word push.
No, you can't say push. You got to take it over or an under.
All right. I will not push, though. Push would be my answer. If they gave us a three-way like in soccer on over under push, and you could bet on the push, I'd bet on the push.
So would I. But on record, we have you down for a push. But between you and I
probably lean a little bit more towards the under. If somebody made me pick a bet, I feel more comfortable on my bet on the under than the over here. Division wise, plus 115. I don't see a ton of value in that. What do you make of plus 115 to win the division there?
I personally, I don't like it. Like you said, the value's not there, and I just think that
Way
this
too
division
difficult
itself,
a division to, sort of sort stuff out. Injuries will probably play the most important role on what three teams we're looking at to win that division. Conference wise, plus 750. It's reaching a number where I feign an interest, but I think I probably need a little bit more in the 9-1 range than the 7.5 range. What do you make of conference odds there?
I definitely like a little more juice, especially because, like I said, just in the division alone, it's competitive enough. Not to mention the whole conference. So I need a little more juice to make that interesting, but I'm probably staying away from that.
Yeah, 14-1 to win the Super Bowl. I'm a definite no-go on that one. There was a little bit of reach the playoffs. Minus 300 is a yes, but I see a little sneaky value in the plus 240 as a no. In this division, it probably will take 10 wins to get into the playoffs out of the AFC side of things. We both are on record as saying it probably will be an under season. So you're sitting right there in the 9-10 mark. So I see a little value overall in the no on the reach the playoff side of things at plus 240.
Yeah, I think that if you're like us and, kind of leaning more towards the under for the win total, then I think you kind of have to be on the same boat and kind of lean towards the no making the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely so. All right. So we'll move on to the Cleveland Browns, everybody's lovable loser who managed to win a handful of games last year. They won them in a very odd way, but they won them. They got to the playoffs, even won a game in the playoffs. And then, I heard Patrick Mahomes managed to beat them, and they tried to pretend like they were just a smidgen away from winning the Super Bowl. I don't quite buy that narrative, but anyway, Cleveland Browns sit at a 10.5 win total on the year, a handful of upgrades. They bring in Jadeveon Clowney. There we go. I got it out of my mouth there. Jadeveon Clowney.
And that'll be the last time you say that name.
And Troy Hill. They upgraded the secondary a little bit. Theoretically got the pass rush even better, probably depending on what you really, really think of Clowney, but that's to each their own. I think if any Titan fan was to ask that question, they might not have quite the same feeling as some others. But anyway, what do you make of this Cleveland Browns team?
Now, I do have to open up with this. I will openly admit that I was definitely a Cleveland Brown doubter last season. And a lot of it stems from the fact that the previous year, I was kind of really high on them. I had high expectations. I was really rooting for them. Not that they were my team or anything like that, but, you always pick that random team that you're kind of like, oh, I hope they do good. Well, that was the Cleveland Browns for me. And unfortunately, they did not perform up to my standards. And last season, I just kind of kept trashing them. I thought that they were fake. I could not really come to terms with the fact that they were as good as they were, at least promoting themselves to be. I think this season is going to be a little bit different. Now, I might have just completely cursed the team by saying that, but I kind of like what they did during the offseason, and I kind of like the fact that they've already kind of have a core, build for that team. And I see the arrow definitely trending upwards for them. So I think that I would lean more towards the over for this win total. But, again, like I said, last time I did, they let me down. And when I didn't, they made the playoffs and, even won a game. So take that as you will. But I kind of like what they're doing this season.
Yeah, this is going to hurt a little bit because I have to sing the praises of the Cleveland Browns. I think what they did in the offseason, especially on the defensive side of things, both with their draft and with some free agent signings, Greg Newsome out of Northwestern, really, really good rookie corner, will be able to go in there and play a little bit. And then, I like the linebacker out of Notre Dame. We'll see if I can get this name out of my mouth. Jeremiah Osawasu Kuamoa. I think that's about as good as I can do for now.
I'm so glad you're the one that actually has to say
is
these
what
things.
we'll go by. But I love that kind of player. He's just a hybrid who can, edge rush, play in the middle of the field, get a lot of tackles, even drop back in coverage and play like a safety role. So I'm really interested to see how the Browns incorporate him. As much as you sort of dislike how Clowney plays sometimes, when he is on the field, he's a disruptive force. He can get into the backfield, pair that with Myles Garrett and, Malik Jackson in the interior. There's a lot of good things on this defensive side of the ball. And I think offensively, if they stick to like last year's sort of style, which is mostly just run Nick Chubb, don't let Baker Mayfield do too much, and sort of let him, dink and dunk off play action to those receivers. I think this Browns team could be really, really good. So defensively, I'm very, very interested in. I think this defense has the capability of sort of jumping into that Rams Steelers, territory here.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I said, I like, even though I was really, down on them last season, I like what they did. I like the way they managed their entire season. And, obviously the season was a success. Now, some people will say that it's not because it's only success if you win the Super Bowl. But I think from, where the Browns were a few years ago, where they were the complete laughing stock of the NFL, to where they're at now, I think that now they're becoming a respectable franchise, at least for the, foreseeable future. And I like what they're doing. I think that they're a solid team. They have really good defense. And, they have an old school type of offense where they're just going to kind of pound it in. And, like you said, if they can keep Baker Mayfield under control and just have him do what he has to do and not more, then I think they're going to be all right. I think they're going to make some noise.
Yeah, definitely so. So now that we both have loved on the Browns quite a bit, they're probably going to win 3 games and self-destruct, and there'll be all sorts of scandals coming out of there.
You can blame it on me. You can blame it on me because I called it. So
yeah, I was going to try to really talk about some sort of weakness here, but I'm having trouble finding one. The only thing you can sort of grip onto is, Baker Mayfield a little bit, but, towards that back end, I'm not going to say he played great, but he played in control. And if he plays in control with the way that offensive line, the talent that they have at receivers, the talent that they have at running back, I just don't know really where I'm hitting on a weakness here. This is a very deep and well-built roster.
Oh yeah, on paper they're stacked. So I mean, if you just going off paper, it's hard to really pinpoint any weakness. I guess if I had to say something, just to say something, I'd say maybe special teams.
Yeah, maybe so, but I think even there,
Yeah,
difficult
pretty solid, I think.
Yeah, find something where it's really hard to pick something apart. So that being said, 10.5 win total for Cleveland Browns. I think they could very easily, even in this difficult division, pull a 12-win season out here. After, Kansas City probably sits way on the pedestal, then trying to reach them, Buffalo. And then I probably slot Cleveland, not right at Buffalo, but, just maybe a half rung lower than the Buffalo Bills here. So, I'm way over on this money line. I think 10.5 really is a pretty low total. I think you could easily see 11, 12, and if things go really right, 13-win season. Now that in this division would be very, very difficult to come by, but I see no way to talk me into taking an under on this one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm not even considering the under. Before you actually sent me the lines, I was kind of expecting, like you said, an 11.5 type line, because just based off the opponents, based off last season's results, and the additions to this season, I kind of was looking at around 12 wins, which was my magic number. So when I saw 10.5, I was kind of surprised. Vegas doesn't really tend to lowball, bets like that, but I thought it was a nice surprise. I'm leaning definitely towards the over on this one.
Yeah, me too. Division wise, we're going at 150. That's still not quite enough for me to be intrigued in the division 150 in this deep division. 150, probably not. I think if we could get to that almost 2-1, maybe a 180, I'd be a little bit more intrigued about taking the Cleveland Browns. But 150, not quite enough for me. What do you make of that?
It's probably going to be a recurring theme with me, especially in this division. I just think this division is going to be too competitive for me to really see any value in that and those type of numbers.
We'll get to Cincinnati. You can just out and outright say no on that one.
Burrow's back, baby.
Yeah. All right. 750, same as the Baltimore Ravens to win the AFC side of things. Do you find value in the 750?
A little bit, but again, it's just too competitive of a division. Like I wouldn't be surprised if, 2, maybe 3 teams are vying for that top spot in the division, and it's literally within a game or so. I just think that's going to be a very competitive division this season.
Yeah, definitely so. 14-1 as well to win the Super Bowl.
I don't
I
think
like this Browns team, but I don't like them to win Super Bowls.
Yeah, like I said, I think that they've made a really good improvement to me, based off last season's results. Going into this season, I think that they're probably like a notch below being considered an elite team. I think if they were to really make a push this season, to me, that would kind of catapult them into watch out for this team next season.
Yeah. And yes, no on the playoffs is minus 200 plus 165. Minus 200 isn't awful, but
sounds like it to me.
but it wouldn't be something I jump on just because I like I said, I think 10 wins in the AFC probably is the cut line like it was last year. And, that's a COVID hit team that, loses 2 weeks of their season and loses 2 games, and then you're on the bad end of not making the playoffs. So I'm a definite no on that side of things. So we'll move on off that one to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a real swing team here. Very interesting. 8.5 sits their total. I think we came to a conclusion that 8 was the new in and around 500. But this team is so interesting. Loaded at wide receiver. Drafted Najee Harris, who will be ridiculously good. The defense is once again loaded. Should be top notch, probably, if not the best defensive, 2 or 3 in the defense, a little bit depending on how Devin Bush comes back from his ACL injury, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. There are problems on this team. We mentioned the offensive line has totally been redone. So it's a brand new offensive line. And you have a very old and beat up quarterback behind center there. So what do you make of this Pittsburgh Steelers team here?
As high as I was on them last season, I think this season there's going to be a little bit of a regression. How drastic it's going to be, I still don't know. As I stated earlier when we were talking about the other teams, I'm a big believer in systems. And I think that, Pittsburgh Steelers, they try to implement the same type of system year in and year out, which is basically a run hard and play solid defense type of team. Can they do that this year? I don't know. There's too many question marks at the offensive line position. I don't doubt that they can get the guys ready, and I don't doubt that they can make them good, but I haven't seen this offensive line, on the field yet. And until I do, and I can get kind of a feel for whether they have, good chemistry or not, it's hard for me to really bank my money on Ben Roethlisberger. Even as much as I was kind of, high on him last season, I just think that the offensive line is so important, especially for an aging quarterback. Like you said, he's never been the most mobile quarterback to begin with. And he's only been getting more banged up and, older every single year. So it just kind of, sets off a few alarms in my brain. and it gives me pause as far as to how good I think this team's going to be. Like I said, I think there's going to be a regression. I just don't know how bad it's going to be.
Yeah. I don't know why. I'm a little bullish on this team this year. I think they're going to be pretty good. You line quarterback factor in there, but I think they're going to go back and really sort of go back. I hate old school. Go to an old style of Steelers football where the defense carries them and they're just going to pound Najee Harris, over and over again, and really not let Ben get all that beat up. If they're going to pass, it's going to be short, quick passes to the wide receivers or tight ends. Ebron and the Furmuth guy from Penn State that they drafted, going to have good tight ends. We've already talked about the receivers and Deontay Johnson and Schuster and Claypool. So I think they're going to run the ball a whole lot and not really put a lot on Ben to have to carry him like he did, in the 2010s to 2020 into the 2020s where he was throwing 50 times a game. I'd be stunned if he threw more than 20 times a game in some of these games where he has control, and they just sort of let this defense maul you and demoralize the other team's quarterback. So I don't know why I feel that way, because a lot of my key concerns, offensive line and an aging quarterback, could come back to bite me. But I just have a feel that they're going to be a little bit better than what people think this year.
See, and I kind of had a similar feeling like you do, but what led me to believe that they're probably going to have more of a regression than a progression this year was the fact that over the last couple of seasons, they've really transitioned themselves from a run-first team to a pass-first team. And I can see the appeal to, when you got guys like Schuster and Claypool, out there on the outside, I can see why you'd be so tempted to really kind of just sling the ball. But, even though they had a really good record last season, they didn't close out the season the way they started. If they could have done so, we'd probably be talking about, a couple game playoff winning team here, which obviously was not the case. So all those things coupled with the fact that the offensive line seems to, look like a whole new unit. The fact that Ben Roethlisberger is another year older, it just leads me to believe that there's going to be a bit of a regression. Now, I hope for all Steeler fans out there, you're right, but I kind of have a bad feeling about this season.
Yeah, I feel a little bullish on this team. We'll see where they end up landing in here. Their health with Ben Roethlisberger is vitally important because they do not really have a backup quarterback. Mason Rudolph is technically the backup quarterback, but even after that, it could get really, really bad if Roethlisberger is hurt. And I think last year you mentioned it. I think towards the end, Ben really got beat up and sort of worn down a little bit. And with Rudolph and Haskins is the other one on the roster. So overall, if Ben goes down, it's not a promising picture at quarterback. But I'm really bullish on this defense. I think this defense will be able to carry them. Now, a little bit of my other concern is, playing Baltimore twice, playing Cleveland twice in their division. That's really, really, really difficult to have all those games. But they do have the aforementioned NFC North. So we get some Bears games, we get some Lions games, we get some Minnesota games thrown in there. So granted, a Green Bay game is also thrown in there, but at least on the side of things, on the other side of the conference, you're getting a little bit of a break with some freebies in Lions, Bears, not to throw ahead a preview for that division, but there are going to be a lot of bad teams on that side.
So I guess after we talk about the Bengals, we're pretty much done with this show, right? Because you basically just talked about the NFC North there.
Well, yes, they're all going to be bad, but Green Bay. And Also, Cincinnati will be bad. So we're going to be doing a lot of bad team previews for a while here. But I just think this defense can hold them in games. And hopefully Najee Harris, sort of takes over that running back role and really, really dominates for them. But 8.5 wins is their win total. Where are you sitting with the Pittsburgh Steelers here?
8.5. Oh, gosh. I think they can pull off 9 wins. So even though I'm a little hesitant, I'm going to take the over. It's still near the 500 mark, sort of. So I'm going to take the over. I think they can pull off 9 wins.
I'm going to go over 9 wins as well. I think they can get to 10 or 11 wins. So I'm pretty bullish on the Steelers side of things. 4-1 to win the division. We were talking about division bets. I really like this division bet because I think they're just a little bit below the other 2 teams in this division. The Cincy you can cross off. So if you're giving me 4-1 and you're making it a 3-team race, I think I see a little bit of value there.
Yeah, I definitely feel a lot more comfortable if I knew that the defense could sustain its play like it did last year for the first half of the season, for an entire season. But, me, I'm a little more conservative when it comes to bets, so I'd probably stay away from that one. But I definitely see your point where the value comes in.
All right, 22-1 to win the conference, 40-1 to win the Super Bowl. Any love on either of those?
No, just because I don't think that they're quite there yet. I think they've got some work to do, but there's value. It's just I just don't know anyone who's willing to make a bet like that.
Yeah. Playoffs, yes, no. Plus 140 on the yes, minus 165 on the no. Little intriguing, getting a little bit of plus there on the yes at plus 140, but I'd probably stay away from this. Probably not quite what I'd want on the yes. I'd probably want in the 170 range, but little value there on the 140 as a yes.
Yeah, I see a little bit of value. Again, as conservative as I'm not jumping on, especially as and not to spoil the rest of this division here, but I see this more as a 3-team race.
Yeah. Well, we've done the 3 teams, and now we have to come to the 4th team in this division.
Wait, is there a 4th team?
There is a 4th team. Their win total magically sits at 6.5. That is extremely large, even with the added game from this roster that I'm looking at here. But the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow is back, theoretically healthy. Mixon, returns. Jamar Chase, their top draft pick out of LSU, is friends with Joe Burrow and was really good in college. Defensively, they bring in, a handful of new guys, a lot of new guys, to be honest with you, and a lot of new guys who I don't really love. I think we talked about it at the end of last year when they brought in a Wheezy after letting go of the corner that they could have signed for the exact same money in William Jackson, and how that made any more sense when William Jackson was a better corner. But, Bengals business, I don't concern my brain with too much of that. But
don't try it. Don't try it.
Anyway, what do you make of this Bengals squad?
To me, this is a learning season for me when it comes to the Bengals. I really thought that was going to be last season. I kind of wanted to have Joe Burrow go an entire season to really see what he could put on the field for an entire season. Unfortunately, he had that horrific injury that put him out. How much of that was, because of the coaching's decisions to have him out there and attempting, 60, 75 pass attempts per game. I don't know if that played into it or not, but to me, I'm just calling this season a wash. I don't think they're going to do much. And I'm just more excited as, just an NFL fan to see what Joe Burrow actually has if he can get through an entire season. To me, that's going to be the biggest story of this year for the Bengals. And again, this is not me trying to trash talk Bengals or Bengals fans. It's just the way I see it.
Yeah. I don't want to break this down too much. They did not improve their offensive line. Could they have drafted one of the 5 high-graded
at least one
offensive tackles that were in this draft? Yes, of course they could. They decided to go with skill position and wide receiver because there have been none of those in the last 15 drafts where 8 get taken in the first round every year. But, the line is bad once again. Burrow, overall, I'm scared he's going to get, beat up once again on this. Yes, you had Jamar Chase, so maybe you hit a couple more explosive plays. But all this is really heavily dependent on them changing their style up a little bit. They just cannot go into the season throwing 60 times a game with an offensive line like this. Burrow will get drilled over and over again and eventually either become so gun shy a la Tim Couch or a Carr and no longer want to stay in the bucket for even a half second, or he will get hurt and then you're back to, Brandon Allen or whatever backup quarterback you decide at the time to play. Defensively,
maybe they'll trade for Andy Dalton.
Yes, they probably can by, week 5. We'll get to their bad offensive line too in a second. But
I forgot they're coming up.
Yeah. Anyway, I just don't see much hope for this team. A team that was pretty solid defensively under Marvin Lewis has really fallen back, and they don't even have the true playmakers to defensively stay in these games. And other than Burrow and maybe Jamar Chase, I don't see a ton offensively to really put the scare in any teams either. So, a 6.5 win total for me, I'm going way under.
See, I'm not going to say way under simply because I know it's only one extra game, but I feel like they did show something, now it wasn't the fact that they were good. That's definitely not what they showed, but there were a few games where they were at least competitive. It's almost like they didn't want to, give in to what everybody out there in the sports world was saying about how bad they were. It really kind of bummed me out that they didn't try to get some protection for the quarterback. Because who in their right mind would try to protect your franchise, quarterback? No one does that nowadays, right? You just kind of let him loose. Just put a bunch of wide receivers out there and hope that he'll just kind of throw the ball up and someone's going to catch it. Someone's going to come down with it. So that made no sense to me as far as, not protecting him more. But even with all that being said, what's it at, 6.5?
6.5. They have to get to 7 wins.
Wait, is there any way that they could actually end up at 6.5 and just push?
No, they cannot end up at a 6.5, even with a 17-game schedule.
What if, they're playing a game, then right at halftime, something happens, Joe Burrow gets destroyed and they just completely call the game off because it's too horrific to watch?
I don't think that's going to be in the cards. So you have to go over and have them win 7 games or go under.
I forget that, if you take the over, it has to be over.
Yes, you don't get your freebie push in this world.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the under, even though I think they can get to around 6. I'm gonna go with the under.
Yeah, I just don't see how they can improve too much on their 4 wins of last year. I think they're basically the exact same team they were last year's. So 4 wins is probably about where I pegged them overall. All right, we can probably go through these pretty quick. 25-1 to win the division. Yes, no.
No, I'm not taking any Bengals bets. No offense to any Bengal fans. I just can't bring myself to do it. I'm too conservative.
66-1 to win the conference.
No, there's good odds, but no.
150-1 to win the Super Bowl.
Now that one's a little intriguing. No,
I I think they could play the season 150 times. None of them will be played out where the Bengals win that Super Bowl. So that's a no. Reach playoffs plus 525 is a yes, minus 750 is a no. Once again, I think that's all stay away on our side of things here.
I will say, I could see myself putting $1 bet on, that Super Bowl one. I did bet that Donnie Avery would lead the league in receiving yards at one point. So that
He loved Donnie Avery. Sadly, his knees did not agree with you.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, that didn't quite pan out. I'm still having to work a 9 to 5.
Yes, I know. Well, if the knees had stayed healthy, I guarantee you would have been in and around there. But considering every time he walked, some ACL popped.
Yeah, wasn't a very good career for him, unfortunately.
I know. It was sad. I love Donnie Avery, Houston pride, baby. All right. We'll move to the NFC side of things, and we'll start out with the one team I think we both think is a Super Bowl contender here, Green Bay Packers. Magically, Aaron Rodgers returned. He missed a whole voluntary mini camp. Great news reporting there. I'm glad we had hours and hours of coverage on that. But anyway, Rodgers back. This team is back. Loaded up like they were last year. Re-signed Aaron Jones. Adams returns. Scantling's back. Lazard is back. Their line pretty much returns, though Bakatari's probably going to miss at least the first 6 weeks of the season, and they got a new center in there. The defense is pretty much returning intact with Eric Stokes coming out of Georgia as their top draft pick at corner. So what do you make of this Packers team? Should be a pretty good season for the Packers. Their win total sits at 10.5.
I think 10.5 is actually quite generous, if you ask me. The fact that they get to play in the NFC North is going to be very helpful when I place my bet. But with all that being said, obviously, I think the Packers are going to be one of those, returning playoff teams that we kind of expect, season in, season out. Not much has changed there. They did have a few losses. That center position, for example, you mentioned they have a new center. That obviously is going to come into play at some point. I was a little confused by the move at throwing money at the running back position.
Yeah, especially when they had, just drafted one the year before and, brought in another one, the Kalen Hill out of Mississippi State. Granted, he's a 7th round pick, but he's been getting rave reviews in camp. But, I guess having 3 good running backs, you can't complain too much. But Jones has been pretty much the bellwether, but paying him, I was a little confused with as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not going to sit here and argue, they should have got rid of him or this. No, obviously, any team would rather have 3 solid running backs as opposed to just 2. It's just the way the league works now. But, as far as paying running backs, to me, it seems like the league has really transitioned itself into next guy up, kind of recycling these running backs. They use them, with the rookie deals. They really take advantage of that low, that low contract to sign other guys that are going to really boost the team and possibly take them to the promised land. I thought Green Bay was probably headed in that direction. I really thought that they were going to use that money to sign key pieces elsewhere or re-sign, guys that were already solidified, like their center. I thought that was probably a more important issue to address than, re-signing their running back. But then again, this is why I am sitting in my office chair talking about the Packers and not managing the Packers. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think, we could expect a lot of the same with the Packers. They still have Aaron Rodgers. He basically did what he would have done even if he was with the team. There was no dispute, which is basically take the little mini camp off. So I'm not too concerned. I think that they'll be exactly where we all expect them to be. And I really like this win total. I'm really definitely leaning more towards the over.
Yeah, I know. It's a shame he missed the mini camp to go spend time in Hawaii with a hot, good-looking actress. What a terrible human being that is.
Is it fiance now? Is that?
Yeah, I think they're engaged, though. I think Aaron Rodgers had been engaged to, the 20 other celebrities that he's lined up in the last 10 years as well. So anyway, this team pretty much is what it is. It's going to be hard, much like the Cleveland Browns, to really find too many weaknesses on here. I could probably slam the coaching staff, for kicking a field goal instead of going for two last year. And possibly they are Super Bowl champions. But I seem to do that every time the Green Bay Packers come up. So we probably have to retire that take once the season officially starts. But maybe hopefully next time they're in a 4-point game with about 3 minutes left on the 5-yard line. We go for two instead of kicking a field goal there to ruin our lives. Anyway, Green Bay Packers, 10.5 wins. I'm over on that. They won 13 games last year. They won 13 games the year before. They will probably be in and around 12, 13 wins once again. So I definitely go over on the Green Bay Packers 10.5 here.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the over. I think that if I had to pinpoint a weakness for this team, even though it's hard to really call it a weakness, I would say it's probably on the defensive side of the ball. Last season, we saw that they were definitely, one of those playmaking defenses. They really took a lot of chances and it paid off for them. And when you have an offense like they do, it's hard to really, worry too much about the defense, because it doesn't really matter whether your defense gives up 40 points, because your offense can very easily put up 48, 47 points. So it's hard to call it a weakness, but I guess if I had to pinpoint anything, it'd be the defense. But I'm definitely leaning on the over here.
Yeah, and it's not a defense that's you'd go, this is a bad defense. You wouldn't put it in the elite category, but it's probably a top 10, top 12, defense in this league. So it's definitely good enough to get you into a deep playoff run overall. All right, they go minus 120 to win the division. I don't love taking minuses to win divisions, but you stare at this division. You are going to have to really, really push me, probably on our next team we talk about, to even think about another team winning this division. I don't see really anybody else even remotely capable of getting anywhere near or around Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, even if not to spoil any upcoming analysis here, but
all the teams are bad below this.
Even if we were to somehow say, all these other teams in the division vastly improved, even then, I just don't think they'd be able to keep up with the Green Bay Packers. So it's almost a sure bet, but you do have to tie your money up, and you have to pay a little bit to get a little bit. So, if
Aaron Rodgers were to get hurt, there could be more danger of that dropping. So that would be the one thing. I mean, hurt, like miss 8+ games.
Like he can't even make it to Hawaii to hang out with his fiance.
That's correct. These two are a bit more interesting. 8-1 to win the conference, 18-1 to win the Super Bowl. We haven't done a ton of ones where we place bets on the Super Bowl, but that 18-1 to win the Super Bowl and the Packers, that one entices me a little bit.
It is tempting.
8-1 on the conference. It's not bad, but this is a pretty deep conference. They're probably 5 teams legitimately who I think could, come out of this conference to get to the Super Bowl. So I'm not quite as intrigued as that one as I am about that 18-1 on the Super Bowl side of things.
Yeah, I agree with you, even though I feel like it's probably more of a sure thing that they'll win the conference as opposed to the Super Bowl, just because there's so many good teams in the AFC. I still think the value sits better in the Super Bowl pick. So if I had to take a bet, I'd definitely take the Super Bowl one.
All right. Reach playoffs. Yes, no. Minus 670. It's a yes. Plus 450 is a no. I don't think there's any way you can take that yes. I don't see a ton of value in the plus 450 on the no either. So I think that has to just be punt and come back and play another day on that one.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not touching either one of those. I'm not laying out that kind of cash, and I'm not laying my hopes on the Packers not winning that division. So
yeah, definitely so. All right, we'll move on to the other team, the one that theoretically is the second best team in this division, the Minnesota Vikings. Not a great season for them last year, 7 wins. They not a ton of upgrades this year. They sort of kept things pretty much the same. I guess in theory, a handful of the defensive guys who were hurt are coming back. They do have, Jefferson, Thielen out there. I think the Irv Smith Jr. getting hurt and being probably lost for the year definitely hurts them at the tight end position. You do have probably the best running back in the league in Dalvin Cook. Unfortunately, you still do have Kirk Cousins manning the quarterback position for you. The line's a little bit weak. What do you make of this Minnesota Vikings team?
I'm intrigued by this team, and I'll tell you why. When I was looking at their offseason acquisitions, I noticed that a lot of the contracts they signed were for defensive players, and a lot of these contracts were very short-term contracts. I don't think they signed anyone for more than 2 years, I think it's what I was looking. So I'm intrigued to see what their plan is this season, because last season with Cook, in the backfield, it almost seemed like you could almost count on them being competitive in just about any game offensively. Their biggest issue was defensively, which a couple seasons ago we were raving about the Minnesota defense and how potent they were, how stout they were. It really, we had a little flip of roles there, and I'm intrigued to see what they're trying to do. Now, I don't think they'll be much better than they were last season. I don't think they compete with the Packers, even if that defense happens to be better. But I think offensively, I think they're entertaining, and it's kind of fun to watch because at any point, Cook can go off for 200 yards. Like you said, he's probably, one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the league. I know there's a couple other guys out there that, definitely are going toe-to-toe with him for that title, but they have a lot of skill at the skill position, and they're fun to watch. If you're not a fan, if you're a fan, I would assume that you're probably sitting there biting your nails trying to figure out what's going to happen. But I'm intrigued. That's what I'll say about this team. I don't know quite where to put them. I want to see what they can do defensively. If they kind of get back to what they were a few years ago. If they can, then I think they might be able to make some noise. And to me, they're definitely the second best team in this division. But, that's not saying much when you look at this division.
Yeah. You're right. I think this team is, like, if you look at the roster, you can get mesmerized by some of these names. You got Anthony Barr at linebacker, really, really fun watch. Harrison Smith at safety, Kendricks. They brought in Patrick Peterson. Now, that would have been much cooler 6 years ago.
5 years ago.
But still, it's a flashy name, and that's what I mean. Then you go on the offensive side of things, Cook, Jordan Jefferson, Adam Thielen. They have names that you look at and really, really like. It just doesn't seem this team has ever been able to exceed expectations. They've always sort of underachieved a little bit, and every time they do something good, they do something bad, and it's always in and around,
How much
7.
of that is Cousins?
Yeah. That's the elephant in the room. It's Cousins, because pretty much ever since they signed him to that big deal, it's always 8, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10. I think they had a 13-win season somewhere in there, but mostly it's, in and around, hovering around that 500 mark, maybe just sliding into the playoffs, playing a good half in the playoffs to make you think this team's really good, and then, melting down. And I just don't see much different from that coming into this year. You mentioned it. If their defense gets back into form, they probably go a little bit higher overall and are more on that 10-win territory than the 7-win territory that they were last year. But I'm not sold that this defense is going to, get back to that level. There are a lot of aging veterans on this defense. They were very good players at one point in time, but that doesn't mean they're going to be good. And I just thought that slippage last year was, indicative of them slipping again this year. And if they get behind, then you're asking Cousins to do stuff you don't want him to do, and that's throw balls all over the field. You want to be able to run Dalvin Cook, control the pace of the game, run play action, hit Thielen in the slot, hit Jordan Jefferson deep. And if you're trailing in games, it's a bad situation, I think.
What's the over-under on this team?
The over-under on this team is 9 wins.
Oof. I was thinking more like 7.5.
Yeah. I'm in and around there. I think there was some stat that somebody dropped like a week or two ago that 80% of Kirk Cousins' touchdown passes are for the Minnesota Vikings have been when they're trailing.
Shocker. I would not have expected that.
So, I think that pretty much sums up Kirk Cousins. If you blindly just looked at his stat sheet, you think he was going to the Hall of Fame, and then we all have visual eyes and watch him play football. And anyway, I just thought that was like a funny stat to bring up. But yeah, 9 wins for this Minnesota Vikings team.
The
only thing I can tell you is they are playing in this division. Theoretically, I wouldn't be overbearing if I thought the Packers could literally sweep all 6 games in this division. So I don't know where Minnesota sits now. That being said, they go to the West side of things, both in division. So they have Cardinals, Seahawks, Chargers, Niners, Green Bay, LA.
As if things weren't bad enough.
So on the schedule side of things, they're playing a lot of good teams, even though they're playing in a bad division. Now they do get the Bengals opener, but then they have from weeks 2 to 4, Cardinals, Seahawks, Browns.
No.
So, you're walking into a possible easy, 1-3 start there if you don't melt down at Cincinnati, which I don't think any of us would be stunned.
That'd be a competitive matchup right there.
I could see it now. That line's going to be even money, and we're both going to be off on it. And Kirk Cousins going to have 5 picks by halftime.
It wouldn't shock me, but. Honestly, I was sitting here and I was pondering to myself as you were talking, and I was like, okay, this line's probably sitting at about 7.5. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to go bold, and I think I'm going to take the over on that. And then you came back and hit me with the 10. Now I'm taking the under.
Yeah. This team probably will only be favored in about 7 games this season. I know that shouldn't be too much of a factor, especially in preseason. But I probably put their win total. I think 8's probably pretty realistic. They could get to 9, and I won't push. I definitely take the under on the Minnesota Vikings here. 250 to win the division. That's a definite no to me, even with the value that these are the only 2 teams capable of winning the division here. But 2.5 to 1, not in love with there. 18 to 1 to win the conference, 40 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. Yes, no's. Yeah.
I think this team just has too many holes. And until we see some sort of improvement, I don't think that these type of odds are attractive to anybody. So,
yeah. To reach the playoffs, plus 110 is a yes, minus 135 is a no. I probably wouldn't touch either of those. Maybe you could really, really have to push me, but the yes at plus 110, slight value. But I think they're much like last year. They're probably the 3rd or 4th team trying to get into that last playoff spot.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I thought that there was a little bit of value in the yes, but not enough for me to jump on it. I don't think it's not enough.
Yeah. All right. So we move on, and we're getting progressively worse. We're going to go to the Chicago Bears here. The Chicago Bears wins total sits at 7.5. They were a pretty solid team, I will say, last year. Kind of solid might not be too kind. They were a team that got in the playoffs. They were a team that got in the playoffs last year.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they were undefeated when they had Trubisky.
They did have a much better record with Trubisky in there. And then he came up in the exhibition game and lit them up. So there's probably something to be said, but that's probably to be said overall. The coaching staff on this team and the GM, I think, are just pretty much atrocious across the board. I have a feeling this is the last year for that. I guess we should probably start off. I will start off. This team has legit no offensive line. They drafted a rookie tackle. He got hurt. He's out for the year. They're bringing in a 40-year-old Jason Peters, who was on the Eagles and essentially got hurt every other game last year and began to look more like a bus and not an offensive lineman. I think this team is going to be really, really bad. Allen Robinson is still on it, though technically he didn't even want to really be there, but they franchised him, so he didn't have much of a choice. They bring in Andy Dalton to get murdered in the first 4 games.
The little red pistol.
And then they have a soft stretch in there where they probably will put Fields in there. But anyway, what do you make of this Bears?
I think the assumption going into this season for the Bears and Bears fans as a whole is that at some point you're going to get to see Fields in there in the game. And I think that's pretty much what everybody's kind of hoping for. That's what everybody's holding their breath for is, will this guy live up to the expectations? Because let's be honest, Andy Dalton, he's a serviceable quarterback. He's played in the league for a few years now. He's been with a couple different teams. And at one point, he was putting up pretty decent numbers, but he's not the same Andy Dalton, and he doesn't have the same type of weapons. So I don't expect much from him. And this team as a whole, as you mentioned before, the offensive line's completely decimated. They basically playing guys off the street, it feels like. I just don't see this team being very competitive. I think this is probably a wash season. This is more of a let's kind of wait till we know that Fields, or we think Fields, is ready to go. And let's put him out there and see what he can do, even with no offensive line and a wide receiver who's probably disgruntled and doesn't want to be there. Things don't look very bright for them, but, there's always another day. You look to find another day, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's possible Andy Dalton will be killed in the opening game versus the Rams. I don't know what they're going
Sunday
to do.
Night Football.
To block Aaron Donald, other than maybe just go with the strategy of let him run through and tell Andy to just lay down and get that game over with. But, I thought David Montgomery played really, really well towards the second half of last year. That being said, it took Matt Nagy to pretty much be threatened with his job to start running the ball. So I don't know if he will go back to that strategy of running the ball or, trying to make passes with a bad offensive line and not a lot of skills at the wide receiver position. I will say their defensive line, as always, is really, really good with Mack and Quinn and Hicks. But cornerback-wise, they're really, really bad in the secondary. So, this defense isn't even – it's more explosive playmaking than actually being able to stop people. They get shredded a little more often than I think people think. I think they always just think the Bears and think good defense, but the line is really good, but everywhere else it's average to subpar.
Yeah, it's been a little while since the Monsters of the Midway were a thing, so I don't think they're quite there. They're probably a little ways away from getting to that level, but I do want to let you in on a little inside information. I talked to one of my sources, and he told me that the Bears might be going with the Bourbon Bowl game plan this season, which basically means just take a knee on offense and let that defense try and do something, because that offense is going to get destroyed with no offensive line.
Well, I've handfully said a bunch of college teams should accept that strategy long ago, but no one seems to ever put it into play. But
maybe they could sign Bobby Boucher.
But they'd rather just watch their quarterback get killed and throw a lot of interceptions. But anyway, this Chicago Bears team, 7.5 wins. I can't go there. They just won 8 games last year, and I thought that was a much better team.
And they don't have the guy who helped them get those 8 wins.
And, at some point, the rookie quarterback's going to come in here. He's not going to be able to win games with this team. So I'm under on this. I don't think they get close to 7 wins. I think they're a 5-win team at best.
And even if he does come in and completely shock everybody and, play lights out and helps his team win a few games, you got to think that at some point he's going to come in probably somewhere in between the season. I doubt he starts the first few weeks unless Dalton gets killed, like you said. But I doubt he starts early on. So you're already taking a few games off there that he's not going to be in it. And then he comes in. There's going to be some sort of growing and learning pains, especially in real games. This isn't going to be preseason anymore, so you got to take that into consideration. And he's not going to win every single game he plays, even if he does play lights out. So to me, that win total sits a little too high, and I'm definitely going to go on the under here. I think this team's got a lot of rebuilding to do, and they seem to have gotten that started with at least their quarterback. But we'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah. All right. Division plus 325, Super Bowl 66-1, conference 30-1. Yeah, I'm out on all those as well. Reach playoffs. They did reach the playoffs last year. Yes is plus 210 and no is minus 275. Any love on anything over there?
I might be willing to lay money down to take the no, but no, I'm not taking either one of those.
Yeah, I was going to say under 3-1, it might be worth it to put a few dollars on that no side of things. If you think the Bears were bad, we're about to get worse. Probably worse as in the worst team in football.
Jared Goff, baby.
Yes, he is playing there. The Detroit Lions. Jared Goff is there.
Oh man, you're making me feel bad.
I don't know what else to say. They released Rashard Perryman, who theoretically was going to be their number 1 receiver. So I don't totally know what they're going to be doing at the receiver position this year. DeAndre Swift is their running back. He's okay to a solid running back. It's a really, really bad team on both sides of the ball. Why don't you give me some sort of optimism here?
They gain some, future compensation for taking on Jared Goff's contract.
That's
true.
Something. But so, the Rams throw around first-round picks like
I know,
like they don't have any until 2035.
I don't think they have a first-round pick for the next. I think until 2025. I could be wrong, but
you will not be engaging in the draft for a very, very long time.
I guess I shouldn't be complaining, because that used to be like the one thing that I look forward to being a Ram fan was. It's okay. We got a top 3 pick. We got the number 1 pick. But it's like something that I can't even say, oh, we got a first round pick. I don't even tune into the first round anymore.
You're going to be sending me messages. Who is this 7th round quarterback out of Old Dominion they took?
Now,
He says he really, really likes him.
Now, if the subject that we're talking about now doesn't tell you what we think about the current state of the Detroit Lions, then I don't know what will. Unfortunately for them, I think they're in a really bad situation. Like you said, getting rid of Perriman, who was supposed to be the number 1 wide receiver, raises more question marks and more I just don't know what to make of this team. I don't know what's going on here. It has a little bit of a Houston Texans type of feeling where it seems like they're just completely trying to destroy everything that's, and I'm not going to say built because they really haven't been good, over the last couple of years, but at least with, Matthew Stafford there, you had a guy who had the ability to, try and win some games. Not that he was very successful at it, but
he did make a Super Bowl.
We'll get it. We'll get into the Stafford thing. Goff made a Super Bowl. So, I mean, listen, he brings some sort of pedigree to that team. Is that enough to get them wins? Maybe. I don't know. I have more question marks. I kind of hope that it turns out well for them for a couple of reasons. If I'm not mistaken, one of our producers is a Detroit Lion fan, if I'm not mistaken.
Receiver wise, this is what we're dealing with.
Let's hear it.
Terrell Williams, who you might remember from 3 years ago being a good receiver for the Chargers. He decided to sign a big deal with the Raiders and then spent 2 years on the IR. So that would be their number one.
That's a 1-year deal though, right?
Yes. And then Quintez Cyphers, he's a Wisconsin receiver, a round 5 selection in last year's draft. He will not be a star. I will tell you that. And then this is how bad we get. Khalif Raymond out of Holy Cross, and he's a special teams guy. So those are your 1, 2, and 3 right now lining up for the Detroit Lions at wide receiver. So Goff somehow has gone from a room full of weapons into a room filled with none. The only thing I can say is DeAndre Swift is probably going to touch the ball 95% of the time. Offensively, they will not be all that great. Defensively, they are never that great. They do have a handful of new guys in there that might be okay. Jamie Collins is there. Trey Flowers is there. A bunch of old Patriots who are no longer useful or good are pretty much there. This team is easily going to bank very, very hard for the worst record in the NFL.
Look, you got 2 future first-round picks coming your way. So you have that to look forward to. Maybe then you can start your rebuilding process. Maybe Goff shows us something that he didn't show us while he was in LA. That's not to say, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about Goff. I've stated it before. During the draft, I was more of a Wentz guy. But we ended up with Goff, and of course he was on my team, so I had to learn to support him, even if I didn't like the pick. Maybe he learned something along the way. He was very successful while he was in LA. Maybe stats wise, not so much, but he won games. Maybe he can help Detroit win some games. I don't know. I just, with no weapons there, it's hard to really, see this happening, but you can hope for the best.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the win totals. 5 is their win total. I'm away under here. This reeks of about a 2-win team here.
Ooh. 2 wins.
Well, you tell me who they're beating. They don't get to play Michigan this year. It's not on the schedule.
I mean, they got to play the Bears twice, and they possibly maybe could compete with Minnesota at least in one of those games. You said it's at 4, correct?
Well, I'm going to read this to you. Their first 7 weeks of the schedule. Home, San Francisco. Away, Green Bay. Home, Baltimore. Away, Chicago. Away, Minnesota. Home, Bengals. Away, LA.
Okay, so maybe 2 wins. I see possibly 1 win with maybe 2 to 3, maybe. But I feel confident to say 1. Yeah. Okay, I see your point. I'm taking the under.
Yeah. They also play the Steelers and Browns and Falcons and Seahawks and Broncos and Cardinals.
Yeah, I'm definitely going with the under then.
They better win the Bengals game. That's all I know.
I don't know. With Joe Burrow's back, baby.
That's week 6. He might not make it to then.
Oh gosh. You had to burst my bubble.
So I'm way under on the Lions.
I'm under also.
We can probably breeze through these pretty good. Division 22-1.
No.
Conference 80-1.
No.
You're going to like this one. Super Bowl 250-1.
No, you've piqued my interest. No.
Playoffs, yes, no, plus 600, minus 900. If you're a very rich man, I'd put everything I could on the minus 900.
Yeah, you'll make something back. I just don't have that kind of money to invest.
Literally every team in the league would have to be wiped out by some sort of explosion for the Lions to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, listen, with COVID still running rampant out there, you never know. But I'm definitely not putting any money on that.
Yeah. All right. That concludes our NFC, AFC North preview. We got one division left. We're going out west with your boys from Los Angeles. Both of your boys from Los Angeles.
Yeah. Well, we go out. Both of your boys.
We go out west to close out our previews before we get into the season. So be sure to look forward to that. Achilles, got anything to let us know about?
No, just same as always. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at TD Achilles. And obviously, stay tuned because after our last preview show, we definitely have some of our picks shows coming up, which is what I really enjoy. I'm looking to make a statement early on this season, so I'm excited.
Yeah. All right. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our content. We got our big show that dropped yesterday for college football to get our preview for the Saturday games and our picks. You don't want to miss that. You don't want to miss any of our NFL coverage. One more preview to go, and then we get into our picks with that. Winning Daily, giving you all sorts of wins so you can win daily. Be sure to like and subscribe. That's our show, and we're out.